Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm Dr. Andrew Wilner, and today my guest is Alfred Alcorn. Welcome, Alfred.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Alcorn is an old friend, and I've read 2 or 3 of his books, and he's here on the show today because he very presciently wrote a book called Sugar Mountain. Was it published about 8 years ago, Alfie?
7 or 8, yes,
Yeah,
2013.
and it's about a pandemic and what happens to people when their lives are threatened by a worldwide pandemic. So today, just for context, is September 29. They just announced yesterday that 1 million people have died worldwide from COVID-19, our current pandemic, which is probably an underestimate, and that includes 200,000 deaths in the United States. So with that as a background, I want to know, how did you come to write a story, a novel, about a pandemic 8 years ago, long before anybody heard of SARS-2?
Well, I think there was, back around that time, there was an outbreak in China, SARS-1, I think, which was basically a bird flu. Um, and it got me thinking, because pandemics have been part of human history. And I always keep thinking, when's the next one? Um, and at the same time, which probably spurred it, was the fact that 7 or 8 years ago, 10 years ago, there was a big movement in this country, survivalist movement, homesteader movement, where people were sort of carving out a place where they can go if the worst happens. Um, could be the fact that a lot of people still had family homes out in the country or in the remote areas where their family came from, or had gone out and found a place that they love and set up a place there. Anyway, I think all of those factors came together in my imagining that a really lethal pandemic uh, that got started, then you would have the elements of Sugar Mountain.
Now, you're
And
not a physician, right?
right,
Tell us a little bit about your background so we can see how this led into.
I'm not a physician, but I'm fairly well self-schooled in evolutionary theory. Um, from a layman's point of view, I don't pretend to be technical, but I can read fairly well into that. So I have a sense when I read medical things, how far I can go into them. And um, so it wasn't something new. I didn't have to start at the beginning. This interest goes way back for me. I was a bird watcher at the age of 8 years old. Um, but I also worked at the Harvard Museum of Natural History, um, directing the travel program. And when you're in the Harvard Museum of Natural History, you run into people like Edward O. Wilson and get to know him and get to read him. So my background, it's not scientific, um, but I'm not unaware of it. I'm also a great admirer of the writer Vladimir Nabokov, who in fact was a curator of entomology at the MCZ, the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard. And I've read some of his papers. Um, so basically, it's not something I had to start from scratch when I started reading up on SARS and other uh, like epidemics, and then which became pandemics, basically. Um,
So, why? You're a writer. You've written, I
Right,
think it's 8 or 9 novels, and
right.
you've got a free day, and you say, okay, I'm going to write another novel. And why write about a pandemic?
It's got all the elements of high drama. It's basically the oldest story in in human history is survival. Um, and and I think survive. You could look at it almost as a genre. Uh, you know, Plane crashes and two people get out and walk down the mountain and survive. It holds you. And in some sense, Sugar Mountain it is in fact a novel about survival. Um, so from a novelistic point of view, from a storytelling narrative point of view, uh, survival in contemporary terms, a pandemic is I hate to say it is perfect for that.
Okay, that helps. Now, what I really want to know is, go the elements of your novel that you researched and you predicted this is what's going to happen, this is how people are going to react. How does that compare to the actual what's happening now in our actual pandemic?
Some of the elements are the same. Um, there's I was just thinking about it. In my own novel, there's social distancing, uh, and I think what you have today. Um, and I came up punning a little bit with what I call social class distancing, which I think is less today. I think we're all in the same boat, and people who might not have been friendly in the grocery store before now I find are friendly. Maybe it's just me. Um, the difference, of course, is that the pandemic I depict is far more virulent. It kills a lot more people and it acts quickly. Um, so that it's more like the 1918 uh, flu pandemic, um, where and some of the other earlier ones. Um, so unless COVID-19 mutates into something much worse, uh, the comparison breaks down. The prescience, so to speak, falters. Um, and what you've got is a milder version today than what I depict. On the other hand, it's the same sense of um, social breakdown, or not so much social breakdown as economic breakdown. Things close up. People have to provide for themselves. Now that hasn't happened, but if you'll remember, I think it was around March or April when you started going to the grocery store, and lots of essentials were no longer on the shelf. Well, that's all in Sugar Mountain. But of course, it didn't take long. Now you go to the store and pretty much everything. So the comparisons, they're there, but they're not. It's. And thankfully, what I wrote about is a good deal more dire than what's happening today. Um, and and I like everybody else, I can't wait for them to get a vaccine so we can all get back to the normality.
Right, I was going to ask
Um,
you about the ending. How's our current one going to end? How did yours end? Or I don't want you to spoil it for us, but does
oh
it?
no, it ends because I think what is it? Herd immunity takes over. They come up with some antivirals that work. Um, things chug back into life. I have a feeling that'll probably, again, unless there's some mutation or some mischief, um, I have a feeling that what's called herd immunity, and I'm hoping for some time when we can all just go line up 6 feet apart at CVS and get our vaccine, and you know get back to uh, we're finding newer and better things to worry about.
So the human race persists. At least they can continue and hopefully buy more books. So I understand
Uh,
that Your book is in a new printing, right? Because of this pandemic, that there's
It
a big interest.
it did. The publisher came out with a little bit different copy cover, and you can get it if I can put a plug in here.
Sure.
You can get it at a website of Pleasure Boat Studio. That's the literary press. I like to think the book is somewhat literary, though highly readable, I'm told. Um, and you can also get it on my Amazon website, Alfred Alcorn author page, or just Alfred Alcorn Amazon Sugar Mountain. Will
Did you
get
want
you there.
to read a few paragraphs?
Well, there's part of the things is I think a few paragraphs at the beginning, because I think it sets the stage um, for what's coming. One of the main characters is he's a retired architect, and Cyrus Arkwright is his name. Now, Arkwright, people say, why'd you pick that name? Well, he he builds an ark. He's an Arkwright. Anyway, a little side pun there. He's in his study. He's got a farm out in the country where he's retired to, and he's a prepper. He's a homesteader. He's getting ready for this, and he comes on. He starts out with him watching the news, and he's watching CNN, and and then he recalls a general awareness of possibilities came with it into sharp focus in 2009 when a bird flu scare made the Centers for Disease Control urge people to take precautions. That blew over, but left Cyrus wondering when avian influenza or some other highly mutagenic virus would turn into a mass killer. He didn't have to wait for nature to take its course to make the nightmare scenario more than theoretical. In November of 2011, news broke that a virologist working in the Erasmus Medical Center in the Netherlands had tinkered with the genome of the H5N1 virus and come up with a lethal contagious variant. The research was part of an international effort to understand the virus so that antivirals could be developed to fight it. The new strain caused immediate concern about its possible use as a bioterrorism agent. A little more than a year later, researchers in China's Harbin Veterinary Research Institute combined a deadly avian flu virus with an infectious strain of human flu. Western critics pointed out that the record of containment at such labs was not reassuring. So that's some of the sort of the background. And again, there's a lot of controversy now as to how the flu got started. Was it in the live market? Was it in one of the Wuhan research centers where perhaps the security lapsed? I don't know. I think that's all still open to discussion. In my case, it was basically um, flu getting out by accident.
I want to ask you a
And
personal question.
sure,
So let's go back. It's January, maybe February of this year. And, it's 6 o'clock. You just had dinner. You're having some tea. And you turn on the news, CNN, and they start talking about this virus in Wuhan, China. And I mean, when did you make the connection between this pandemic? And you say, yeah, I think I wrote about that already. What was that moment like?
it was sort of like, hey, Alf, you predicted something. It was, well, I went, first thing I did was go pick up Sugar Mountain and check the publication date. I said, wow, this is 7 years ago, because as you get older, time goes by faster. Um, And at that point, I started to actually get really worried, um, partly because, um, as it's turned out, this virus is a lot more insidious than it first seemed like. It attacked old people, it was very dangerous to them. But now it seems that there are other things happening. And my fear at the time, in fact, when it started to really get into the news, was that it could mutate. Um, because I believe there are certain pathogens which are more mutagenic than others. Um, and I don't think that's happened. And that's a great relief. Um, but early on, I was thinking, yeah, look at, uh, I happened to stumble into this some while ago.
So do you have a well-stocked basement, with water and guns and food for the next,
No,
10
no, I
years?
never got that far. But we live out we have two places, but out here in Coleraine, where we have some acreage and a cellar, we did some shopping, um, and I did buy some corned beef, um, in little cans, which I've since found to be inedible. That's okay. But we stocked up on a bit of sugar and flour. We didn't go crazy, but some cooking oil, basics, just in case, long shot. But it's also things that we could use as we went along.
All right, let me
Um,
switch gears here. I
sure,
understand you have a brand new book that was just published. Can you give me
exactly.
a 25-word summary? What's that all about?
Uh, right. Uh, I've had a little bit of fun with it. It's called The Evil That White Men Do, because it's based on the Shakespearean quote, "The evil that men do." And it's a satiric, and I like to think sympathetic take uh, on sort of the turmoil swirling around Trump and about race relations in the United States. Um, and I think it's, you know, it just at some point, particularly what some call Trump derangement syndrome, does get out of hand. And the book is really saying, hey, um, yeah, things are happening, but it's not the end of the American world. Or at least I hope so. I hope it isn't.
So, where can we find your books?
Well, that book is on Amazon. It's a new publication, so you have to. At this point, it's only an ebook. I'm still looking for a publisher if there's anybody out there to do a paperback. But if I have to, I'll do a paperback on it. I tried to get an agent in New York interested in it, and they all talk about they're not the bravest people in the world. They were all ducking, but this is controversial. You know, it's amazing what a corporate structure. I don't know. I want to come up. Well,
But it's available to read. And do you have your own website?
I'm just putting one up. I'll tell you how backward I am. I have a Facebook, but I have a friend now helping me set up a Facebook page because I have a 13-year-old granddaughter who knows so much more than I do. And the problem is I sit around here trying to learn this stuff, but I feel like I'm an old dog trying to teach himself new tricks all the time, and I'm not good at it. And
But you are
like
a very
remember,
experienced writer, right? I think 8 or 9 novels over the past 20 or 30 years.
it's closer to 12 at this point.
So my last question is why spend all this time writing novels? Can you give me a short answer to that?
Yeah, I would say it's an addiction. It's a kind of Calvinistic addiction because it makes you really feel good, as Dorothy Parker. She said, "Writing is torment, but having written is delightful." I actually find the writing part delightful too when I'm when I'm finding things. Um, so for me, having written, that's when the torment starts. You start to trying to get published and get it out there.
That's not the fun
So,
part. Well, Alfred Alcorn, I want to thank you very much for telling us about Sugar Mountain, a novel about the pandemic that happened before our current pandemic and that thankfully has a happy ending. So we're all going to look forward to that. And tell me, remind me again the name of the new novel?
it's called The Evil That White Men Do.
All right, The Evil That White Men Do, and that's a satire. We'll just tell people that
It's
up
a
front, right?
sympathetic satire. Yeah,
All right.
it's and thank you, Andrew, very much, and I hope to see you out here in cold rain uh, soon, out where in fact Sugar Mountain is set.
Well, I
Uh,
would love that. Thank you for that invitation. I will definitely take you up on it, hopefully sooner rather than later. Lots of fresh air there, right? Lots of fresh air.
exact, exact. Yeah,
Well, thank you very
and
much.
thank you, and take care.